This is VOA Africa. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory in for Hashtag the UR2 is off today. It's Monday, July 22nd. This is Africa 54. Al-Shabaab strikes again in Somalia, killing at least 17 people and wounding dozens more. Millions of Zimbabweans face severe food shortages due to weather conditions and economic hardships. And U.S. President Donald Trump renews his attacks aimed at 4 Democratic congresswomen of color as his critics characterize his comments as racist. The Al-Shabaab terrorist group is claiming responsibility for an explosion in Somalia Monday, which has killed at least 17 people in Mogadishu and wounded 28 others. Sipo Sikoyiya has the details.
Several people have been killed and dozens more wounded in an explosion in Somalia's capital. The bomb went off outside a hotel near the international airport in Mogadishu. One eyewitness said the blast struck the first checkpoint on the road leading up to the airport. Emergency services rushed to get those affected to hospital. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack. The Al-Qaeda-linked Islamist group is trying to topple the country's weak UN-backed government and impose a strict interpretation of Sharia law. It's been behind dozens of attacks just this year. Somalia has been torn apart by civil war since 1991, when clan warlords overthrew a dictator and then turned on each other.
Well, that was Sipo Sikoyiya of Reuters reporting. To the south now, Zimbabwe's food situation is in dire straits, elevated from a crisis to an emergency, that's according to the United Nations. The UN says the majority of the population is food insecure because of an El Nino-induced drought and the ongoing economic meltdown. Columbus Mavunga has a report.
Plaxede Subura lives in the impoverished town of Epworth, less than an hour drive southeast of Harare. It's just one of the towns in Zimbabwe that's in desperate need of food aid. The 48-year-old unemployed woman says she's having trouble feeding her grandchildren.
We have resorted to just one meal a day. At times, it's just the vegetables we get in our garden. We are struggling to get money to buy food. I wish donors would bring us food, especially for the children, as I'm not employed. Even school fees I can't pay. One of them was not well, so medical bills. They go to school without eating, as we do not have any food.
UN aid agencies and the government say Zimbabwe needs about $218 million to stave off hunger for about 5.5 million people between now and April 2020. That's when the next harvest is expected, and that's assuming there will be enough rains. The United Nations is currently urging farmers to invest in irrigation or small grains to make the country more food secure. The ongoing drought has devastated crops, especially corn, which is used to make the staple food sadzam, a thick porridge that is served with relish. In addition, Cyclone Idai in March destroyed many crops a few weeks before harvest time.
Unfortunately, we're moving from crisis to emergency, which is pretty serious. Also, the economic challenges facing the country. People have lost their income. The situation is really precarious. Are hoping on the generosity of the international community. The dependence on the international community would be much more.
He says the US, the United Kingdom, and the European Union have been generous on food aid in the past and hopes they will come through again. Unfortunately, that generosity might not do much to ensure Harare and other cities have enough safe drinking water. The city of Harare says 2 of its reservoirs have dried up and others are following suit. Water rationing has begun. The poor economy has also led to a shortage of water treatment chemicals, raising fears of waterborne diseases like cholera. That would only add miseries to the likes of Plaxides Shibura, who at the moment is mainly concerned about providing food to her family. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare.
Health providers say some pregnant women in developing countries are losing access to prenatal health care due to the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump and its expanded global gag rule that cut aid to international organizations involved in abortion-related activities. VOA's Brian Padden reports on the impact of the global gag rule across Africa.
Family Health Options Kenya has closed or reduced its family planning services nationwide after losing $2 million in U.S. funding since 2018.
The global gag rule was also very comprehensive because it did not allow organizations even to provide family planning, which is basically our core mandate as an organization.
The U.S. global gag rule blocks around $8.8 billion of U.S. international health assistance to organizations that provide abortion services, offer pro-abortion counseling, or advocate for the liberalization of abortion laws. Since 1984, these partisan restrictions have been enacted by Republican presidents and rescinded by Democratic presidents. Before losing the U.S. funding, the Kenyan Health Network reached an estimated 76,000 people annually. Some family planning clinics in the developing world are often the only local health providers, not only for prenatal care, but also for HIV screenings, children's vaccinations, and contraceptives. U.S. anti-abortion groups such as the National Right to Life Committee say the impact of global gag rule restrictions have been exaggerated by opponents. They note that over 700 international aid organizations are still receiving nearly all of the allocated global health assistance funding.
It's only a handful of organizations that refuse to accept the money for these services because the right to kill unborn children is more important to them.
Tobias says private donations are making up for the canceled U.S. government contributions, but some health organizations in Africa say they have not received enough outside funding to make up for the cuts. In March, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo expanded the global gag rule to reduce assistance to the Organization of American States for funding of third-party groups that lobby for legalizing abortion in Latin America. Global gag rule opponents object to the Trump administration imposing what they say are partisan, politically driven restrictions over providing comprehensive medical information and treatment.
So you're asking doctors to sort of choose between politics set in Washington or actually the health and ethical decisions set in their own countries.
Supporting critics' claims that the global gag rule does more harm than good, a recent study in the Lancet Global Health Journal reported a 40% increase in abortion rates in Africa during past periods when the restrictions were in place. Brian Padden, VOA News, Washington.
The German airline Lufthansa resumed daily direct flights to Cairo Sunday after a one-day suspension due to unspecified safety concerns. But British Airways is still grounding all of its flights to the Egyptian capital and says it plans to keep them grounded for at least 6 more days. The two airlines on Saturday abruptly cancelled all flights to Cairo after the British government warned of a heightened risk of terrorism against aviation. Passengers scrambled to find alternative flights after receiving a notification from the airline informing them about the decision, which came into effect immediately.
Been in Egypt for the last couple of weeks, watching the African Nations Cup and seeing some amazing historical sites, and I've had a fantastic welcome from so many people across the country. Unfortunately, my trip has ended on a bit of a sour note. British Airways cancelled my flight, which was meant to be at 8 o'clock this morning, merely last night, 12 hours ago, citing security concerns, no flights for another 7 days. But they've rebooked me onto Egypt Air, departing merely an hour later. A bit confused because if there's serious security concerns, why would they still allow me to fly from the same airport merely an hour later?
Well, Egyptian Minister of Civil Aviation, Lieutenant General Younes El Masri, is expressing frustration that the airline suspended flights without consulting Egyptian authorities. British Airways says its move was a precaution to allow for further assessment. No American flights have been affected so far. About 60% of the world's coral reefs are under stress from rising temperatures. That's according to the non-profit group Reef Resilience Network. New research shows that just how devastating 2 heat waves were to corals in the Indian Ocean. His viewer is Kevin Enox.
In 2015 and 2016, the southern hemisphere was hit by back-to-back heat waves caused by the El Nino weather pattern. That 1-2 punch of warm weather did significant damage to some sensitive coral reef systems off the Indian Ocean.
We lost up to 50% of our corals now 3 years ago in 2016. This is mainly the branching corals, so we're talking about Acropora, for example.
Acropora corals are an important building block of reefs. Heat waves happen even without climate change, but coral reefs used to have years to recover. But Catherine Head from the Zoological Society of London says that with the new reality of climate change, heat waves come more often and are more intense.
So if these heat waves become more frequent, as they're predicted to do, then the reefs simply won't have a chance to recover.
Head was part of a research team that was recently in the Indian Ocean gauging the damage done by the consecutive heat waves.
The staghorn corals, for instance, which are known to be more weedy species, were highly impacted. So 86% of the staghorn corals were actually affected by these heat waves, whereas some of the more robust corals were less affected.
The concern is that losing corals means we lose a significant amount of the ocean's diversity.
So we will see a reduction in the diversity of the fish and the invertebrates which live on the reefs, and perhaps also a reduction in the structural complexity of the reef. So some corals contribute more to the calcium carbonate structure than others, and that's what causes this really complex, really interesting integral structure.
And despite efforts to revive dying reefs, coral reefs are slowly disappearing.
So there are predictions which say perhaps reefs may go functionally extinct by about 2050 should the emissions continue as they are at the moment. But really it depends how much we can reduce our carbon emissions as per the Paris Climate Change Agreement to keep sea surface temperatures below 2 degrees.
But right now, scientists say the world isn't doing what's necessary to prevent the devastating rise in sea temperatures. Kevin Enox, VOA News.
Now, the picturesque city of St. Louis in northern Senegal is full of local art and boutiques. But the Atelier des Femmes is different, not only in that it teaches women of all ages and backgrounds how to sew and crochet, but it also uses entirely recycled materials to make a wide variety of products. VOA's Esha Sarai has more.
The Atelier des Femmes in Saint Louis is a bit different than all of the other boutiques on these narrow streets. The Atelier, run by a group called La Liane, which houses children and women in need, teaches women how to sew and crochet, all with recycled materials.
Some women will say, I know how to crochet, I know how to crochet. And as soon as they come here, they see, because there's really a difference between working with yarn and working with plastic bags.
Plastic bags that would otherwise be littering the streets.
It's helping the development of the country by reducing the trash and mess. So we collect these plastic bags, we wash them, we cut them, and we crochet.
Whether using plastic or not, some women at the Atelier learned how to sew for the first time.
I had never sewed, actually. I didn't even think I would ever touch a sewing machine. But when I came here for the first time, I learned, right at that sewing machine there.
Once the women have finished their training, anything they make is sold in the Atelier's boutique, and a percentage of the profit comes back to them. These women say that the sense of family in the Atelier keeps them coming back.
We're all family here.
There are a lot of people suffering, and the association, La Liane, is always ready to help them. So I find that really touching. I see myself in the association. Maybe that's why I've stayed here so long.
Whether they spend only a few afternoons at the atelier or work there daily, every woman who passes through leaves her mark in the community and her products in the boutique. Isha Sarai, VOA News, Saint Louis.
I am Sheka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
U.S. President Donald Trump has renewed his attacks on four Democratic congresswomen of color, alleging Sunday they are not capable of loving our country. Now, this follows days of similar statements by the president. Critics have deemed his recent comments about Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan as racist. VOA's Arash Arabasadi has more.
Last week in North Carolina, at a campaign rally following days of disparaging tweets aimed at four congressional representatives, Trump supporters broke into a chant that became the subject of controversy. The calls of "send her back" went on for 13 seconds before they died down and Trump resumed his speech. In Washington, following widespread condemnation, Trump attempted to distance himself from the chant.
But it was quite a chant, and I felt a little bit badly about it. But I will say this, I did, and I started speaking very quickly, but it started up rather fast.
Trump on Sunday took to Twitter to question the lawmakers' capacity to love the United States. Speaking on ABC's This Week, Congressman Elijah Cummings said Trump's recent rhetoric divides the nation and said he believed there's no doubt the president is racist.
Mr. President, we want you to be a role model. We want somebody in that White House who our children can be proud of, who our children can emulate, who our children will look up to. And that is not the kind of example that you're setting.
A senior advisor to the president's re-election campaign defended Trump and refuted claims of racism.
I have worked with President Trump for 2 years, and he is not a racist. He's a compassionate man whose policies have focused on the minority community. He is a results-oriented president who is focused on helping uplift all Americans, including blacks, including Hispanics.
The controversy erupted last Sunday when Trump told the four congresswomen to go back to their countries and fix things in their homelands before telling the U.S. what it ought to do. 3 of the women were born in the U.S. and all 4 are citizens.
These comments from the White House are disgraceful and disgusting, and these comments are racist.
On Tuesday, the House of Representatives voted to condemn the president's comments. Only 4 Republicans broke ranks to join in the vote that otherwise passed along party lines. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
Well, footballers from Algeria and Senegal returned home over the weekend following the Africa Cup of Nations final, which Algeria won 1-0. Now, both teams had fans waiting for them at the airport. Here's a look, starting with the champions in Algeria, rather.
I am proud of this great victory, and we are very happy here in Blida and all over Algeria. My father told me a lot about what happened before, and now I can live it. I am happy for that. We need this joy, especially with the current situation in the country.
We are proud of this team, which has become as great as all the best teams in the world. Now we are able to beat any team, thanks to our coach, Belmadi.
Today, millions of Algerians can live through a great joy after 29 years of absence in African football. Today, we are the masters of Africa, and our coach, Belmadi, has allowed us to forget the bad times.
In Senegal, the Lions of Teranga may have placed second, but their fans were proud of their showing.
The cup did not come to Senegal, but we feel that the cup is still with us. The boys have worked hard. They are true Lions. We are happy.
This is a great atmosphere. All this because we love our country. We encourage them. We still have a long way to go, but the best is yet to come. God willing, it will happen. It is our duty to come and support our national team because of what they have shown on the field. It's just bad luck and God's will, but it will happen.
We thank God. I am very happy. This is not shameful for them. This is football. We all know that the boys fought to the end. That's why we need to encourage them. The people need to be more united. Maybe, God willing, we can achieve more in 2021. We are proud of them. We are not disappointed at them at all. We are sad, but not disappointed.
They played well. They did what they had to do. I have nothing against them, but God decided that it wasn't going to be theirs. That's why we are here to welcome them home. They showed they are true Lions. If they were not Lions, they would not go all the way to the finals. They worked hard. That's why we are here.
Well, that is some of the fan reaction from Senegal and Algeria following the Africa Cup of Nations final. Now, viewers, Sandra Shamari has spent the last month in Cairo giving you the latest on the tournament. He joins us one last time for his thoughts on the final. Now, Sunday, the tournament is over. Everything is done. What is your takeaway as you stand there in Cairo?
Thanks, Makori. Assalamu alaikum from Egypt. My takeaway, Makori, is that this was a successful tournament, if you will, Makori, because this country was given only 6 months to prepare. But they did it. As you know, Cameroon was supposed to be doing that previously. But anyway, Makori, when you come to security, there was 3 checkpoints at the stadiums. Like all the stadiums, you had to go to 3 checkpoints with x-rays, including pat downs. And this was very successful because you could see physical police as well as those who you could not see, the undercovers. But actually, they were very, very executing their job. Well done on that area. And also, Makori, as you know, this country always, the language is Arabic. So if you don't speak Arabic, it could be a problem. But anyway, in the stadiums, they had volunteers from all across Egypt, from all the universities. These were young ladies and gentlemen who could speak very well. They spoke English, they spoke French, and some of them spoke even Spanish and Arabic. So it was easy for us to go around and ask questions and get help. Yeah. Anytime you needed anything, it was easy. At the same time, if you saw that closing ceremony with 60,000 people, the choreograph, the dance, the music, the lights, preparations were wonderful. So they did a very wonderful job. Indeed. The only thing also was, yes, Makori.
I want to say that's commendable, but now help us understand here. The top Nigerian goal scorer, he got actually the golden boot, and then he decides to bow out of the national team. Help us understand, what were the reasons given for this?
Yes, Makori, this was, everybody's asking what happened here. But anyway, as you know, Edion Ogalo had the top scorer golden boot. But he was in the squad that went to Russia 2018. And according to him, at the time, there were death threats to his family, the entire family. This is because of the performance of Nigeria at the time. So he wanted to bow out since then. But the coach pleaded him to stay. And you know what? When he stayed, it paid off. He came out with the golden boot. So to tell you the truth, he decided because of his own family affair, and he said he wants his family to be safe, so he's now going to continue to play international in China. He's only 30 years old, so he has some few time to continue playing football, but not in the international duties, Makori, because of his safety and also his family. That's what he said, according to his Twitter account.
Definitely family is more important than soccer. But now the Pharaohs, the Egyptians, were of course knocked out in a way, very humiliating way, quite early. Give us a sense of how things played out when the finals were being played and even the aftermath now that they were not in the game.
Yes, Makori, that was very interesting, and it was a loss for the Pharaohs, to tell you the truth. The mood of the country went down during this tournament when they were out. But guess what, though? There was light at the end of the tunnel when they saw their foe, South Africa, getting beaten by Nigeria. They were very happy. They were getting back to the mood. And also in the final game, they were divided. Some of them supporting Algeria, they call them Gazair, and some of them supporting Senegal. So it was a split moment, and it was history in the making to see those two giants of African soccer playing while the Egyptians on the back bench cheering for what team to win that night. It was very interesting. And after the game, so many Egyptians, some of them were happy, some of them were sad, just because they didn't want to see Algeria winning this cup. But anyway, after 29 years, Makori, it's a big thing for Algeria. It is history in the making for that country. Also taking into consideration this team, in the previous tournament, 2017, they went out early in the group stages with only 2 points. And guess what? Tonight, they are the champions.
Very quickly, you know, sometimes people think that if you have international players in your national team, then you probably have an edge. Did that show very obviously, or did the players just keep up their game regardless of where they play normally?
Well, yes, McCoy, very interesting. As you say so, everybody was looking at Riyad Mahrez, the international superstar playing for Manchester City in England. But according to the coach, he said all his players are the same. Regardless of how a star you are, this team has played as a team, although so many of them are playing overseas anyway. So if you look at the Senegal team, if you look at Algeria team, it's the same thing. But the only difference came to the coaches. This was history in the making for the first time. African coaches played the final. Aliou Cissé from Senegal, as well as Belmadi from Algeria. These guys played soccer in Africa. Aliou was there in 2002, Belmadi was there in 2004, and they said it's time now for Africa to wake up and realize that African coaches, they can also do some big things, Makori.
In a few seconds, what are you hearing? Is Africa soccer rising to higher levels than before? What are people saying there?
Well, most people will say it's rising, but according to Kalusha Bwalia, the Zambian former international star that I spoke to, according to him, he says he has seen so much difference right now that during their time and this time, African soccer has gone to the next level. It's rising, and there's good soccer to be seen, and that is yet to be seen. But I think that's what he thinks for now.
Sunday,
yes.
Thank you very much, and that's excellent reporting indeed you've been doing there. Africa 54 sports guru Sunday Shomari reporting live from Cairo. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.